In his new book, American Gridlock, Why the Right and Left Are Both Wrong, Woody Brock lays out the 5 major challenges to our nation's future and also some policy solutions. Dr. Brock is also the president of Strategic Economic Decisions. And Woody, I'm just going to list through these challenges. I think most people understand we're looking at potentially a lost decade. We're facing national insolvency because of entitlements. We've got potential perfect storms in the financial markets. We've got to stand up to what you call thugocracies that rig their currencies. And we've got to address the issue of income inequality. I think most people understand we have these big problems. How do we solve them?
Well, the point of the book is it's very ambitious. What you've got to do is use new types of logic and new types of thinking that permit you to identify solutions to these problems that aren't left-wing or right-wing in nature. That's the crucial point. Game theory, John Nash, The Beautiful Mind, his work. The economics of uncertainty, extensions of supply-demand theory. If you use these tools, many of which are quite new, what I did is to show you can identify win-win solutions, and you basically free the debate from the usual MSNBC shouting at Fox News, New York Times shouting at the Wall Street Journal. You free it up.
Right, well, you call it the deafening dialogue of the deaf.
I call it the deafening dialogue of the deaf. And the Pew Foundation has recently shown in a poll that all kinds of Americans are fed up by this. They're insulted.
Right.
It's funny to a point to hear people shouting. It's not funny when you're living in the back seat of your car for 3 years.
Right. So
our full unemployment rate right now, properly measured, is about 16%. This is a disgrace. So it's not funny anymore. People want answers.
How do we get that growth? And you're proposing a domestic Marshall Plan that featuring $1 trillion per year in infrastructure spending?
Yes. One of the things I do is address that issue separately, what you do with dealing with thugs like China, what you do with entitlements, bankruptcy. But if you're asking about the lost decade, chapter 2, what you do is you say, okay, what can we do to get things growing subject to new constraints? If we were in this room 15 or 30 years ago, the answer would have been, well, if the private sector is dead in the water, there are no good animal spirits, then the government's going to come in and build, I don't know, they're going to just give people money. So you have a stimulus of so-called...
Do the highway build or build airports and railroads?
Well, they didn't do all that. I mean, recently they did none of that.
Right.
Nancy Pelosi basically pushed through a stimulus package which just maintained incomes for people so they didn't get fired. State workers not getting fired. The problem is, what's different this time is that the bond markets of the world are going on strike. Witness Italy, witness Greece, witness Portugal. We have outstayed our welcome. We can't borrow trillions more without the bond market saying, we're worried the kids one day are going to say, hell no, we won't pay. So what I proposed is, we need a Marshall Plan for infrastructure. Let me be clear. We have not put a new roof in the house in this country in 50 years. Every study shows that. We're not talking about bridges and potholes. That's the beginning. Energy grids, medical system infrastructure, all kinds of things. $1 trillion a year is conservative.
Right, and you say we're approaching a tipping point where if we don't address this immediately, it's going to become critical.
And you're absolutely right. Once a certain point of decay is reached, you don't lose one bridge every 5 years, like the one over the Mississippi that fell in, you lose 100, and then the public run out for it. The difference is, we do have to do some borrowing to do this. So what I'm requiring is that you do not invest in infrastructure willy-nilly. You only invest in a subset of projects that make money. And then the bond market says, like the interstate highway system of Eisenhower and his successors made a fortune. The bond market says, we're happy to lend you money if you aren't wasting it. Because it won't be on the shoulders of the grandchildren who may say, no, we won't pay. It'll more than return itself. So that's what's novel about this.
Right, and you want to help fund it with an infrastructure bank, a public-private infrastructure bank?
Yes, and that's not an original idea. What I want is a much bigger story, and what I want in particular is that the analysts in this bank who will come from China, Singapore, New York, London, wherever, will be very well paid. There'll be no political conflicts of interest, and their job will be to apply the new logic of public finance. Kenneth Arrow, the Nobel Prize winner, and Kurtz at Stanford wrote a book about this, in which they rigorously analyze the 17 bullet trains we all want, find that 4 of them have high rates of return on investment, and 7 don't. And if Nancy Pelosi's San Francisco-LA train is a loser, it'll be posted on the internet, and she won't show her face.
So do the ones that are
what's
economic,
different.
is what you're saying.
Only do the ones that will make the bond market happy because they can earn a good return. The great misunderstanding that is paralyzing the entire West, I'm about to go to Australia tomorrow, it's the same thing down there, although they don't have our problems, is the mistaken belief that deficits are bad and we can't borrow money. It is wrong because there is no such thing as a deficit. There are good deficits and bad deficits. Good deficits are when you borrow and more than happily repay the money. Bad deficits are when you just spend money keeping people at work who vote for me, but the debt is on the shoulders of the grandchildren. That is the difference. Deficits are wonderful if you need a new roof put on. Switzerland and Japan put new roofs on every year. They couldn't do what I'm talking about because if you put a new roof on every year, your rate of return is going to be low.
Right. Because you don't
It's
need
the
a new
guy
roof.
with a leaky house that really needs this. So that's the good news for America. We need it.
All right.
We do not need mansions.
Got to leave it there, and we'll talk about the political implications of all this in another segment. Woody, thanks very much.